Good evening, this is Avraham Shira from Eretz Israel, and welcome to our daily class from Rebbe Nachman on Patreon. I decided to go live on Facebook with this Torah because it is extremely special. It is Torah 21 of Likutei Moharan, and it deals with divine inspiration and human inspiration. And instead of just reading it to you and translating it, I'm going to try to give it over a little bit freelance, as you will. And the main first idea, of course, is that when a person is aroused and enthused with desire for God, he creates a vessel to receive divine inspiration directly. And when a person doesn't have that, and he makes lots of efforts, and he looks over all the books, and he goes through all the introductions, and he gets all kinds of opinions invested in his work, he will come to a certain amount of understanding and wisdom. But divine inspiration comes very quick, very fast. Because why? Because the heart is heated up. Now, how does the heart get heated up? Because thinking thoughts quickly heats up the heart. Now, the Rebbe explains to us that when you think a thought and another thought, thinking thoughts quickly actually draws heat into the heart. And so the heart opens up. And so there becomes a vessel is made to receive a higher level of wisdom that you didn't have before. Now, you can get to wisdom by the hard work, and I'm not saying it's not good to do the hard work, right? But it's very important to understand that there are times in your life when you can just be excited and open up a book and look at it, and boom, you get the whole idea, you get the big picture in one go. And that's the way the prophets receive their prophecy. They get the whole picture, and then they put it into words and describe it to themselves or through the words that are given to them through their hearts. But it's coming from obviously a very pure source. So we have to understand that this doesn't preclude doing the hard work and learning as many books and introductions as we can and whatever wisdom that you're pursuing in the Torah realm. And that, for that matter, outside the Torah realm, it's also going to help you, this idea. Whether you're learning wisdom in finance or wisdom in government or wisdom in medicine or science. But the point is that when you want God's help, you got to get excited about God, right? You know, it's not like a one-way street here, right? If you want divine inspiration on how to get to Mars, then you better have a relationship with Mars. And with Mars, well, no, wait, that was good. A relationship with God to get you to Mars and get you back. You know, that would seem to be part of the program. Okay, now the next idea he brings down is that we need to purify ourselves in order to receive that light and in order to be able to distinguish between what's divine and what's not. And how do we do that? By purifying our eyes, our ears, our nose, and our mouth. And those four concepts, of course, make up the 7 apertures of the head, which are called the menorah. Like the menorah, the candelabra that stood in the Beit HaMikdash is a channel of God's light into the world. And so too, your eyes, your nose, your ears, and your mouth are channels of your soul that bring light into the world. And when those filters are pure, guess what? What comes out of them is pure. And then you experience visions and sights and sounds and even smells and tastes, and you know that God is somewhere behind them. And you experience the truth of any moment in a much deeper way than you normally would. And so by purifying the 7 apertures of the head, the menorah, we make our filter into one that is aligned with God's light. And we become what God created us to be, which is a channel of Him in this world. And then we complete the partnership that He created us for, and everybody's happy. So, you know, who can knock that? Now, of course, it's not such an easy thing in our modern world to have a pure eyes and pure ears and pure nose and mouth. How do we do that? Well, pure eyes is very clearly to understand, you know, to not look at things that we shouldn't look at. But the clear ears... Pure ears means you only hear truth and you listen to the rabbis, right? You listen to the rabbis means you understand that there are people in the world that are smarter than me. And I figured that out pretty quickly because I started out pretty dumb, you know. But then when I heard the rabbis talking, I said, I never heard anybody talk at this level. And then I looked further into the Talmud. I said, these guys are learning these 3,000 pages of material. No wonder they're smarter than me. And so I learned to listen to the rabbis. And then the nose is to have Yirat Shemayim. V'yiricho b'yirat Hashem. And that the idea of awe is something that you can smell. Awe is like, when your eyes pop open and you see the sunset, or you see a volcano, or you see something awesome. Well, that automatically activates the olfactory sense. And so that awe is something that is achieved and attributed through the nose. And it's like when you smell a beautiful scent. Some people smell it and it's like, eh. But people who are spiritually sensitive and they smell something beautiful, that's great. That means that they're spiritually sensitive. That means they have an inside track to awe. And awe is one of the things we need to have this experience of divine inspiration. Now, the last one is speaking truth, of course, through our mouths, that we avoid all sheker, that we avoid all kinds of lashon hara, speaking evil about people or about ideas, about groups of people, about anything that, that takes us off the mark of God's truth. So that's a lifetime test right there. But, it is achievable, and we just have to get on the track and do the work, and you'll be surprised and amazed how you are drawn along the path by just making the first effort. And so that's important to remember. You don't have to finish the work tomorrow, but if you start today, you'll see that by tomorrow, you will be a little more sensitive, a little more purified, and a little more clarified to see and to hear and to smell and to speak at a higher level. And that's the beginning of creating this vessel to receive this divine inspiration. Now, and he calls this inspiration Shefa Eloki, which literally means divine nourishment, divine sustenance. And it's the life force in everything. Now, that life force, he compares further on in the Torah to Ruach HaKodesh and also to the idea of the schach, right? The schach that God puts on the sukkah, the palm fronds or other kinds of cut living plants or trees, etc., that you put on the sukkah booth, the tabernacle they call it in the fancy old English, right? And that schach is compared to the surrounding lights of your mind, what are called the transcendent intellects or the makifim. Those transcendent intellects, they're waiting there exactly in the place when there is a vessel to enter you. In other words, your next inspiration is right with you, but if I don't open a vessel to receive it, it's going to be outside my consciousness. So I need to open up that consciousness to receive that new idea of how to make my business succeed, how to make my marriage work, how to get married, how to serve God, how to pray true prayers. Whatever your goal is, the higher advice is just outside consciousness, and I just need to get excited about it and create that vessel and purify myself in order to receive it. Now, okay, so what does that have to do with the sukkah? Well, the sukkah is the symbol of this idea of the surrounding lights, and the Rebbe compares it to the 7 clouds of glory that protected the Jews in the desert so they didn't get sunburned, and it's also compared to the 7 coverings of the eye, which are a Kabbalistic concept for the layers or the filters through which we are able to see the physical world from a spiritual place, meaning our soul, our higher soul. And so the sukkah, but ask a simple question. Everybody should ask this question. How is it that the palm fronds or, cut branches from an olive tree are going to be carrying divine inspiration in sukkah? Why? And the other question is, well, what if I do it all year long? What if I live in a sukkah? Won't I have divine inspiration all year long? But it doesn't work quite that way. What it's teaching us, of course, is that you see, when something is a mitzvah, God puts his will on it in a time and a place. And for that time and place that his will is riding on human actions, that's when the divine inspiration appears on that physical matter as something as simple as a palm frond. After the festival's over, it's gone. The will has been lifted. And that's the nature, by the way, of all mitzvot. When people want to know, well, why you Jews do all these mitzvot, and why are you putting on the boxes on your head, and why you eat kosher, and why you put on the prayer cloth. I mean, there are logical, rational things to be said about that, but the real high-level answer is very simple. God's will is on the act. And when that is so, his will, what is his will? Well, his will is the divine inspiration, right? As opposed to my inspiration or the other inspirations that are out there in the world. And it's just a clarification process of getting to the real inspiration. So I can be inspired to do something, and that's human inspiration. But do I know for sure 100% that it's God's inspiration? Well, probably not unless I do a lot of work. And, well, I've written a book called The Path of Personal Prophecy that deals with this subject of clarifying our human inspiration and getting to God's inspiration. But we have to put aside our agenda for that. But nonetheless, the idea is still that will is the carrier. Remember that. And when God writes in the Torah that we need to do certain things at certain times, that means that's when he's revealing his will. And if I want to attach to his will, I just have to do what he says. And by attaching to his will, automatically you're going to get a spark of that divine inspiration. Now, how it gets channeled and filtered down into your consciousness depends on how purified your menorah is. And it's just a matter of being a good person, looking in the right places, smelling things in the beauty of things, speaking truth, and believing in the words of the righteous. So I think that's not such a hard menu to fulfill if we've seen what's going on in the world and all the other inspirations that are out there to seduce us into other types of service. But I think when we narrow it down and understand the mitzvot are really the gateway into receiving that higher will, and you live your whole life that way, you can understand why these people, the great ones of the past and the present, have reached their tremendous levels. That they can see the past and they can see the future, and especially they can see right into now. And that's where we are. So that's where we need most. So God bless you all with this inspiration, and God bless you all to understand that God is not trying to tie our hands behind our back to make life tougher than it already is with his religion. No, he's trying to free us by giving us a very clear described pathway that is going to lead to illumination that lasts, not the weekend at the ashram inspiration. Right? I'm talking about that stays with you and builds and grows throughout your entire life, and it passes on to everyone who knows you, especially your children and those who love you. So God bless you all. We'll continue our daily classes on Patreon. Sign up if you can, and look for us also on YouTube, Facebook, Web Yeshiva, Insight Timer, Lighthouse Torah. Well, there's a few other places out there probably if I look hard enough. God bless you all. Have a great week.